Market live. All right. Strange days ahead. Man, I got a lot going on. Gotta focus on things. One thing at a time. What's that face, Pentel? I don't know what that is. Angry but depressed. TBH. I think meant to be honest. Hey, what's up? Yeah, AMC's not very good today. I'm with you. Kind of a fake out move this morning, huh? And I don't know what's going to happen, but this doesn't look bad until it hits the top. Just kind of a sad reality here. You know, it's odd because it, to me, and I'm just being candid, it really does look like it could have been a rising accumulation, but it has some issues. So I don't know. It's really struggling to get over this level. I mean, and we did the same thing back here, you know, at 276, and now we're kind of struggling here. I just don't like this motion. I don't think it's impossible that it's good, but it's just not very, it doesn't look good to me. You know, this to me looks like a sign of weakness right here, going back to 272, that's trying to be followed through on in the day's price action right here. And it almost went. So I guess if I have to be very honest, there's not very many times, I don't know, I'm always trying to be honest, but there's not that many times where I look at AMC and I think it's in stark contrast with itself, like it's in battle with itself. Usually it's kind of obvious. This feels like, I don't know. To be honest, it's kind of like a hot mess. And I just don't like it. I mean, that's all there is to it. And I've seen a rising accumulation before, and it does have a similar vibe. Like it might go to a like an S curve, kind of a move here, and then go into a cat ear. But it didn't go low. It just popped like it was done this morning. And it's odd. It looks a lot like a, you know, like that shallow S curve right here. I mean, it's really quite nice because it makes a higher low, bounces up, and then just fails right at the creek again. Doesn't even really push it much at all. There was a small breach. It didn't get to the topmost creek at all, which would have been up around the top at 282. This is one of those setups that probably going to have to just wait until the week. If it just keeps this garbage up, we're going to have to wait till the week's over and come back and take a look. I don't see any silver lining here because it didn't go above the ice. So I was talking about it this morning on the Discord group, and I said that a lot of things. I said a lot of things, but I was saying that it needs to come back over 284 like immediately. If this is and this is what I drew yesterday, if this is a rising accumulation with just a back up there, then that's okay, but then it would have to then breach the top. Instead, we're making a 1, 2, 3 top, triple top. I don't see that as particularly bullish. So some people are kind of ignoring, I don't know. Some people ignore that stuff. They think it's still bullish. I can't ignore it because it's just in my nature to not ignore that. To me, it's a meh. Like it just doesn't look great. It reminds me of what happened right here. Like you had the opportunity to jump over, and instead what happens is it goes into like a weakness. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Like to me, it looks like it's gearing up for a drop, but whoever the operators are, whoever the bull operators are not letting it go quickly. So they're just kind of keeping it propped up. I don't know why, Maybe it's a bear trap designed to get people to think it's going to go down, but it looks like just delay to me. So this is what I mean right here. So this had a buy-in that was higher. It's a good learning opportunity anyways. So you can see like the 1, 2, and then the 3, 4. But the 3, 4, even though it jumps the creek, it's going down. Like it doesn't make an effort right here. You can see it jumps, but it doesn't hold supports. In fact, one of the first things that happens after it jumps is it comes back down and it taps the bottom again, presumably to like check it out, but it's like failing. You can just see it visually. I don't need to explain it too much. So this particular motion, you can see the cross right there. It's very loose. For whatever reason, AMC's been very loose lately. It hasn't been really tight. It looks messy. Like normally it's really tight. Like there's a lot of hits that are really clean. I'm not really seeing that right now. And I'm on the 15 minute and it still looks like a mess. Partly maybe because volume's lower in this region, so it just looks like a mess. But you can see that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. And then when it does that, so there's like a bit of a weakness in this because it's failing to advance. It's failing to hold this trend. And then it pushes up one more time and it doesn't even breach, the top, and it goes back below, and that's all there is to it. It's pretty classic distribution schematic. So one of the things that I'm trying to, and it was easy enough to tell it wasn't going to go, and we were talking about this time like, oh, it needs to get over 276. So what was the earliest indication of that? The earliest indication of that was right here. There was another wave. You could call it like a fib fan or something like that. There was another wave right here. And this was actually the earliest indication that this might be distributive because it broke through what was the prevailing trend and then it attempts to recapture it, but it goes high and then immediately dumps below. So the action is it's puncturing. It's like pushing through a floor, pushing through a support. Then it takes the price, goes up to the top, right? That's the head fake where you think it's going to go, but it's not. So it looks kind of like a spring action or something, but it's really just a liquidity check that failed because there's not strength, there's no stopping power. And notice that when they come back down, they don't actually go below right here. They actually come right above, and this is like a UTAD. So this is an upthrust of sorts, and then it comes down, chills out, and then there's a UTAD. This is what gives us that classic kind of cat ear appearance sometimes where we're looking at it like this, and it's like, yeah, that's not only a wave cross, but it's kind of like a fake out at the same time because it looks like it's going to jump. But the key was that it didn't come back through here. So when it goes down, then it generates a hook. This looks very similar, very, very similar to what we're seeing right now. And I can't say for sure that it's definitely going to do the same thing. That's not possible. But, in this zone, once you had that breach, there's an attempt, I suppose you could call it that. There's an attempt to, continue the trend up, but it's failing the whole time. And the volume is like anemic. It's pushing up the volume is only pushing up on these up thrusts. There's no volume in these bottoms really, right? You're just seeing it right there and that's it. And so it's a very obvious distribution. So we see something very similar to that right now. And to me, it's not really a question of, is it possibly distributive? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you look at it, I'll get rid of some of this extra noise. It's very similar. So you have almost the exact same motion right here where you're pushing up and you can see like there's an attempt to kind of drive the price up, just like there's an attempt to drive the price up here. But as soon as it hits the top, and it does go over the top, this is what needed to happen, right? Is that after it breaches the top, it needs to make a higher low. But what happens is that instead of making a higher low, the first thing that happens is it comes back down and it pushes through a support. And this is very similar to what we see back here in that it lost that uptrend. It didn't hold it. And it could have. I mean, the idea that it needs to go down for liquidity is something. You could say that, but it could have held. It could have held. And there's plenty of examples where this, on stronger stocks where this kind of a motion, even if it dipped, would hold above then. So then the next action is like we push back up, and you can see the similarities. There's the similar action right here. Now, one of the key differences that someone's going to probably point out to me is that, A, this is higher, but I would just suggest, well, this is distributing along 276. This could be distributing along 284. But B, you would say, well, on the big picture, it's made a higher push than even the previous top, which is true. So that it's possible that it can come down without being a complete and total crap show. And I would agree. But I would say that for now, like, this is pretty much the same exact schematic. You have a push down, you come back up to the top, you break through, you're avoiding going low. It needed to make a rebound. And this was the same thing that I said back here. I said the exact same thing. I said it could be bullish if when this goes up, it jumps over the ice. It is no different. Like, if this had jumped up over the ice, that could have been bullish. But it has to get back above here now and then continue. So what I said this morning was, if this is bullish, this is going to be bullish, it has to come back up over the ice, which is right here, and then it could continue. It's really, really simple. So if this is a shallow S-curve, it will do that. Like, if this were a shallow S-curve that was just a liquidity check and had already done what it needed to do, it would have done that. But I would also argue that it probably would not have made this weakness. Like, we would have seen this come up, and it would have been a really high-strung cattier. Like, it would have been one that was really high up, and then it would have dropped through like this, and that would have been far more bullish, like where it's floating. Instead of this big U shape, it's got like a rounded top. So I'm not trying to be like overly bearish today. I'm really not, but you just kind of have to take the chart for what it is. This looks very distributive because of that final shape. Even these guys, I would have been like, whatever, they're kind of high here. It looks like it's bullish here. It starts transitioning. Notice that there's like a change where this is like high up, and I'm going to try to do it a little bit. Notice there's a change here where the first two pushes, even coming down, there's a clear resistance. Like, you can see the bouncing here. And it's a nice, strong resistance off of bottoms. But then look at what happens when it passes above this like 15-minute EMA. It starts like flattening out right here. And then notice, like, from there on, it's very distributive. That's like profit taking 101. So you're seeing this like these big swoops. Notice that transition. And now look at this final one. It's like, wow, by the time it gets up here, you're no longer looking at it. In my opinion, I'm like, well, I don't know how to see this as bullish. Now it's pushing down and making lower lows. It's like breaking through bottoms. So there's an issue there, right? Like, it's transitioning away from something that looks like it could be very bullish, certainly, this bottom right here, to something that looks kind of more like a sell-off. And you can see that it's almost like gravity, right? It's like starting to pull it further and further back to the place where now it's breaking through even previous. It's like creating weaknesses, right? So I saw it yesterday. I didn't really care too much about it because we were talking about yesterday big picture stuff, and we were talking about downside anyways. So I was like, well, it might happen. I'll just leave it at that. And we looked at different scenarios on AMC, and I was like, whatever, it could come down. I'm trying to look at the nitty gritty because this was really a fake out this morning. It's really hard for me to look at this and think this is still bullish, is what I'm trying to say. If this were a cross up, this cattier right here, I mean, I guess it's happened in weirder ways in some places on AMC. Like, maybe it's been a last minute move in some places on AMC. But most of the time, if this does not break out, if this cattier comes back down, this is bearish, right? So you need to see the M cross. This is the last M cross here. The big one needs to jump up and build higher supports. That's why the shaping here is really important. That's not just for looks. Like, that would be the M, one up again, down, making higher lows. So instead of that, we see a rejection off the ice right here, and then we're coming down, and again, it kind of looks like it's holding, but if it doesn't break here, it's just another foretop, just like this one. Like it's no different. In fact, it might even like do the same kind of similar thing where it has like an up thrust here and then it craps out on this line, which is now like kind of the final expansion. And look at that. It's already punctured it. It's like we're just kind of moving from one to the next, walking downward. Now, is it possible that after a drop here, if that were to happen, right? And I think it's likely. That's what it looks like to me. If that were to happen, is it possible that it just buys back up? Well, yeah, and we had talked about maybe even Monday because there was some timing that looked pretty good for Monday, but it could get quite nasty. We could end up in a really downward spiral for quite a while, and I was trying to warn people I said it last minute on the Discord that I thought that, really this could last quite a while. I mean, it could be June before it moves, frankly. I don't know, there's other people that have said that before already, but I'm just saying it now because there is some timing that works out pretty long, and I hate that for us. I do. I'm with you on that if you're kind of frustrated, but I can't do anything about it, The rest of the market peaked, I think, today. Everything's kind of looking like it's flat and or red. You might get a little more bump on some of them, but even the S&P 500 finally got to the 4-hour. It looks right. Again, you might see a little more of a bump on that. I was following a lot of different tickers. I've been following Starbucks, Tesla, AMD. Man, this call out kind of ticks me off. I'm not going to lie, because yesterday I said I thought it looked really good to move from 111 to 121. I'm pretty sure I said that like on stream when we were looking at it. And for whatever reason, I didn't click the buy button on it. Like I had a call option pulled up and everything, but I got distracted. Sometimes when I'm streaming, I don't pay attention to what I'm doing with the trading. And even for a minute, it's like it looked so good yesterday for a final move up to 121, and I was like, well, it's going to come to 115 or 121, and we talked about it at length. So I'm kind of like, ugh, because it was like 8% up this morning. It's like, man, that would have been a huge trade. For an overnight swing, I would have been rolling in it, but I didn't trade it. So I told Mr. Momo that I thought this looked like a good place for the S curve is kind of done. It could go farther. I mean, it could go to 132, but I think the 1618 is the main extension that's hit on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If that's what this is, we got a bottom 1, 2, and then 3. It could come down really low. I mean, this could be coming all the way back to 97, frankly. But most of the time, that wave 3 has a less retracement. So 106 is a likely level. There's a creek there, too, coming down here that we haven't checked. I wouldn't be surprised if it stopped at 114. There's another widening kind of creek there, and then there's a steeper one that could lead you down farther, even to the 0.5 at 102. If this is a 1, 2, 3, then 4 is probably going to be long and a bit boring. Usually it ends up being a bit more sideways. I would not be surprised, given that it's overbought on the 4-hour, and it's starting to slump quite a bit. It looks like a high type of a buying climax, So I wouldn't be surprised to see it retrace. And I mentioned that if it comes back to the 50 on RSI, this would probably be a good trade. So I'm still going to look at it like it could be a good trade. Tesla just tearing, but I don't even know anymore. It broke out of its major creek. So I don't want to say the sky's the limit, but it's got a pretty massive amount of headspace. To me, I could be wrong about this, but to me, if we think that GME and AMC, and this is what we've been saying, okay, implicitly I've been saying this. I haven't said it all the time, right out loud. But we did say that we thought it was going to come back to that January 7th period because $32 and $4, both of those respectively on GME and AMC, are actually from the same exact time. And they're important levels, but they go back to this January 7th region. I've been seeing a lot of lockstep in the market, and I wonder if that January 7th region isn't being used everywhere. You can see for example, on Tesla, January 7th is right here. That's a gap zone too. I mean, if you look at where it is here, the gap, there's a gap right down from it. It's kind of a strange level until you look backwards a little more, back to like December. It seems like that was built as an important support. So it's very possible that we're looking at a January 7th return. And I mean, again, frankly, on Tesla, this thing starts widening right there. So, I mean, it started here maybe on December 12th. It's a similar level to where it is on January 7th. And you can see that widening. So if this does continue, doesn't mean it has to go like all at once. This could be a 1, 2, 3 right here. That's, needs to have a break, but it certainly could be going towards near 406. I mean, it's got a lot of room. It really does. And it's already above the top. I had drawn it maybe having more backups, but it didn't do that right here. So instead, I still think this one's very relevant on Tesla. This is going back to 330. I think it's very possible. So when I'm looking at AMC, I'm like, well, we're not moving yet. But then again, if we don't think this is going to happen all at once, one thing we could do, although it's a little bit sketchy, is we could go and we could look at where do we think all these other guys are going to, especially the big ones, because they're all moving in lockstep. They're all moving together. And this looks exactly like AMD's chart, which looks pretty much exactly like Tesla's like a unique one because it spent more time down bottom, but this looks almost exactly like IWM. I mean, everything's kind of moving together right now on this recovery bounce, if you want to call it that, and or this bear flag, if you want to call it that. It is definitely like rising as if it's a kind of wedge, but it hasn't yet come back to really test that bottom again. You can see on SPY, it hasn't come back yet. If this is a 1, 2, 3, then this would be a good time to go sideways for a bit before 5. And, I'm not a big Elliott wave person, but I do think that the wave 1 might be a good one to just gently to use. So, I mean, that's a pretty big wave. It was a huge wave. But like we can go back to January. This actually has a top here on this widening of 602, which looks like, where's the 7th? Yeah. So the 7th is right there at 594. It's a bit different. I don't really like that line anyways. That's right here. Why the 7th, Booksy? I'm not sure. I mean, it's close enough to the new year. There was a January 3rd on a Friday, and then the 6th was on a Monday. It does seem to signify like the middle of the upper range for all these guys, so maybe that's the reason. I don't know. Makes sense to me if that's where the S-curve is. You can see right here, like the way I've drawn it, that there might be a desire to come back and check that level, because that's where it rounded. On average, it was wrapping around that level, so it's like an average level. We're really close to that on SPY. I mean, we're basically like right there. So if you did some kind of a wave 5 after a wave 4, and the wave 4 has a deep retracement, this could end up being way back down here and still be like an Elliott wave. I actually don't think that works because we can't go below 1, but I mean, it can go pretty far. That's what I'm trying to say. So there's a deep retracement there. So even though I don't know it's right there, might as well hit it right kind of thing. And maybe it does. Maybe it gets there by Friday. Who knows? If it did come back down, it wouldn't surprise me to see it come back to check some of these outer ones, maybe even 550, and then see that last push up a little later. That would work. It just would. Because you would break down this trend, and then that would be part of 4, and then you'd come back up. And I think I already kind of did this before. I talked about that. But if you're just trying to get back to the top, that would be one way to do it. So I don't know. That would imply, again, this is a little bit sketchy, but that would imply that you don't actually go up until June. There's a backup in the end of May, and then you push right at the beginning of June. And if that's the case, this would have plenty of time to kind of like back up going into the end of, and this is what we talked about on the other chart yesterday, is like, well, if it does go down, we could see new lows. And if it backs up, it could end up being this thing where it backs up into the end of May. it doesn't run till later, which is a bummer. I'm not excited about that for the purposes of buying it and all that jazz and trying to trade it. This has been kind of a headache. So I'm with you on that. It's a mess. It's designed to kind of look bullish, but it has some serious bearish undertones. And I just don't see it, I could see easily this pulling back down to a new low. And if it's not making the advance right now, to me, it looks a lot more like what happened back here in April. It's just happening a little farther out. Well, why would that happen? Why wouldn't it be like just taking off? I don't know. It's not really. In some ways, it seems complex. In other ways, it's not at all complex. It's really simple. We're talking about little micro cat ear kind of setups right here, like on these little jumps and stuff. But on a bigger picture, you're looking at a larger potential cat ear, right? And this is no different than what happened back here in some ways. What is the requirement to not go down again, right? It's like, that's really what everybody would want to know anyways. It's not so much like how does it get there every step of the way. I've got all these little tiny diagrams to talk about those things. But it's not so much about the diagram so much as it is, to me, is about what is being required. And what's required is like the big creek jump, and it's just not doing it. And we had talked about the, I don't want to get into the OBV stuff again, but we talked about the daily OBV yesterday. And there's just plenty of room for like pullbacks and whatnot. So as we see this, like, we just have to take into consideration that there's a bit of a widening going on, and it's not respecting the broader jumps that need to happen. So it's creating like a platform right here, and that's pretty much the same thing happens every time before it distributes. So you might be inclined to say, well, it's running above this moving average. It looks different than it does right here. But then I would say, well, look back at where it was on the 27th. It's the same idea. And even had like a head fake there that pushed out. You get up top, you kind of flatten out like it's going to create a platform, but there's these subtle little weaknesses here and there. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that it's going to happen the same way. I don't want to say that because we need a change of character in the end. So eventually it's going to happen. Eventually, if it's going to go up, there will be a change of character, meaning it won't do what you would expect it to do in a distribution. So at some point, it would have to change. But for now, and I'm purposely like deleting some stuff just to kind of clear up the chart a little. It's in some ways it's very, very simple, right? So we have really major creek bodies that we're kind of struggling to like really break over. We have not made a higher high yet on the bigger picture. We made a higher high right here. That's a positive, right? But we also did the same thing back here during distribution. So it's not like, again, like that by itself is not enough. That's not just going to make you suddenly run. Then you have to really make that jump. And that's where we're really sort of sitting on our laurels right now and not doing the move. You can't just sit here and then expect it has to be bullish. Some people are going to look at it and say, well, I'm not going to call it to be bullish until it's dropping. And I'm like, well, yeah, or I'm not going to call it to be bearish until it's dropping. And I'm like, yeah, but then you're not really doing TA. You're just kind of observing what's already happening. You want to have that in the back of your mind to some degree, the anticipation. So I'm not going to go big picture right now. I'm not going to do that. We did that the last two sessions, and it's been a lot. So I'm going to take it easy today. I'll look at some of your requests. So if you do have requests, feel free. I will look at them. I just think on the whole, there's easy enough to follow, in my opinion, there's easy enough to follow basic, what's the word? Basic creeks, I guess, basic jumps that you can follow here that are pretty standard and straightforward. I don't find them to be particularly controversial. One would be this concept that we were talking about with the widening and then narrowing. This happened in the 2000 and 23 model, I guess, that we looked at yesterday. It's also happening market wide, you know. And you can see right here that there's a line I drew, and it's not, again, none of these are meant to be haphazard. They're all there for a reason. This one represents kind of a major established creek. It was built out on the early days of the drop. It may be easy to forget, but that's the middle of the S-curve. That is very often the breakout point, or at least close to it. So one example, which is an easy one to usually see that because it's a big downtrend, is after March 2022. If you look at the middle of the cat ears, and again, I'm not going to go super macro here. I'm just going to look at this as an example just real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. If you look at the cat ear there, right here, there's actually a couple different spots, and these are very flat. They go kind of like straight across. Oh, come on. We're already losing connection here. Yeah, I'm not going to read the message right now. I need to focus. I'm going to see if I can delete some stuff so we can get a better stream quality. Just kill some of these extra windows and junk. There's really no reason to not have it, but anyways, so you can see that this did a really good job of representing right here. These are the two ears, like on the walk down on the S-curve. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about the S-curve and how the ears can often represent the breakout targets. That's actually true of pretty much all cat ears. They'll represent later where you might break out and start a real uptrend. You can see something similar back here when it's flat on these cat ears right here. It's like eventually this represents where it breaks out and starts an uptrend. This breaks out and retraces, but it is where this begins, like this massive widening, right? Like right there. So after jumping that particular trend, there tends to be a lot more incentive, I think. It's sort of a signal fire maybe to your operators that this is going to now move on to do the next thing. Same thing would have been here, so on and so forth. Okay. So in the current time frame, I don't see this as like unimportant. It's just another particular marker. This is also significant, clearly, but we've jumped that already. So it's like, unless there's a parallel structure there, that one's already done. You know what I mean? And there was a parallel structure back in that example I just showed you, which was like 2022. But this is particularly of interest right now because we're on top of it. And that is different than what happened over here. So there's a contrast. But it's not different than what happened in February, where like we did advance on this before and failed to hold it. So kind of going with the same vibe that we've been talking about. We talked about 265 quite a bit, 270. I still think it's in the cards that it's possible that this has like another push and then drops. And it could come as low as like, if it did it by Monday, it could be down here at 267, you know. I know I just deleted a bunch of stuff, but I'm just suggesting to you that until it gets above that top and really holds, that ice is now a big barrier. It's just like what happened over here, and it doesn't look bullish right this second. Have I ever seen it go up after like the third? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Not usually when it makes a weakness like this. This is usually the signal that it's going to end up turning around. And that could be a tell-all as well. So that signal to me looks like very unimportant, I guess, on the small scale. We were just looking at that a minute ago. It looks like it goes really low. Like if I use the last high and this one, it could even go really, really low if you use that peak and this peak, right? That's a possibility, like in terms of creek direction. But what's more significant maybe is the fact that it hit this yellow line again and it came back down and checked that. That could be a saving grace for us to some degree because it could mean that there's a stopping point right there instead of going significantly lower. It also means to me that that's kind of a do or die moment. Like if it drops beneath that, then it's likely going to go much lower. So there's a coordination of 2 markers now, maybe 3. So one's right here. I would get rid of this one. And that's from the 2 local bottoms that were on early May. And then the other one would be from the very, very bottom through the first bottom. And that's, again, a fan. We did this yesterday. This isn't new. But we didn't do it. I don't think we did it on this chart. But then I would use that and suggest that in combination with this yellow marker and the 265, that's a zone that you don't want to pass through. If you pass through that, it's definitely distributive, in my opinion. I say that, and you never know. Maybe it dips beneath it, and then it just rockets. But we did talk about how yesterday there was a very big difference. I'm just bringing it back to mind, and we'll move on. But we talked about yesterday that there was a really big difference between this area, and that this doesn't make a lower low. It does have a nice push down. I mean, it's a serious push down, and it does come lower than that support, which is significant. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't drop beneath the bottom here, right? So we're kind of staying elevated. That could be distributive signal for sure, but it's not, at least for now, it's not. I would comparatively say that it's stronger than it was over here, and it definitely is. And you can see it visually, like it's holding up better, as if it's coming to the conclusion of these iterations that are just kind of doing the same thing over and over again. But we can't, again, ignore the fact that, yeah, sure, if it went down, it would be similar to what happened in March. And I'm on the 1 hour, and you can see on the 1 hour in March, on the 26th, that wicked up above the hourly. And right now, we're kind of cruising like around it. So we're really like hanging our hat on it. So this could be a danger zone, but what I'm trying to suggest is that if this goes down again, and again, it looks like there's only 1 of 2 options. This had to break out in like a really serious fashion, and I don't even know what it would look like at this point. It'd have to be like a 1, 2, 3, 4 here, because it has to get above there, which would be really, really fast. I mean, it has to be very violent, is what I'm saying, like an obvious. I guess they could do it slow like they were doing here, but these are really messy trends because of the flatlining. You can just visually, I don't know. I'm kind of trying to simplify it, and as I'm talking, I'm just thinking like, well, it already looks pretty simple to me without having to do much more. You can tell that this is downward, and so if you're going to have any kind of a support, you might find it down here. It's just directionally like where it would go into this pocket. It seems the most likely. And that level goes back to this liquidity top around 270, 265, thereabouts. But 270, I think specifically, looks really likely. 271 maybe. So you can see why that dip might be in the cards. And I don't know, man. Normally you get a 1, 2, and then a 3. And if it hasn't crossed up, and this did not, then 4 doesn't usually cross up. It usually ends up breaking down. And I've got the other trend that I deleted here. And you can see it's already kind of punctured that. And it's just sort of waiting. So it wouldn't take much, in my opinion, to send this back down. If that's the direction the operator wants to go, it'd be pretty easy. And you might do it with a little bit of an up thrust here, like a fake out to 282. Doesn't really matter to me. And then you would have it come down through this. And that is where I would end up seeing it if it does drop into Friday. I don't know if they'll take it all the way through, but this isn't really complex. It's actually quite straightforward. And then again, like you might say, well, is that bearish? I don't necessarily think so, because this is like a wave 3, and then there's a 4, and you'd have to have a 5. And that you might say like, well, that's really garbage then, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 wouldn't go anywhere, and it would just die. Maybe, maybe not. It could be the start of a bigger one. It could be all part of a wave 3 that's beginning. Because remember, we have this gigantic one right here. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I haven't done like Fibonacci extensions, but we can do a trend-based extension right now. some people are going to say, well, that's an ABC correction with a new wave down or whatever. I'm just going to say, look, if it's all part of a wave 1, then we're really just getting started. And if a wave 5 here gets you up, and then there's a small ABC, no big deal. You can see that the fib extension takes you up to 350 exactly. And then beyond that, way higher up, the 430, the 427 is the 2618. So the 1618 is 350. The 2618 is actually right where we thought we might land, which is 430. And AMC's done all kinds of stuff with fib extensions. It doesn't always go to the 1618. That's the most common universally, right? And you can see that the 1854, 1786 is right here around the previous tops at the 370 mark. So, right. So when I look at this, I'm not particularly like concerned. I'm just waiting. I don't really think there's much else to say about it right now. I just wanted to like do a quick analysis on AMC as the stream starts so we can get through that. And I see this as a possible 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that could end up breaking out. But you have to be mindful of like the possibility this still goes down. And that results in, of course, potentially like a new low. We've talked about that. We already talked about those bottoms, where they might be. So I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to wait. And there's nothing really to talk about because until we break out here now, at this point, there's really nothing to say. I would suggest to you that this, again, is not bearish in the way that we normally see bearishness. I think, and I might be a little bit mistaken here, but I think that this S-curve really, to me, it looks like it's going up and around this 270, which would be probably close to like a 50% retracement. I think that's correct. So I think that is the correct marker right there. If you were to simplify the action and get rid of all the noise, to me it looks like this. And there's a lot of noise right here around 270 when it came through the middle. And then when it bounced, it does go a little low, dropped to like 269 or something. But it looks fairly symmetrical with what we see on the big picture. So I'm kind of like on the bigger trend here. So I'm kind of thinking that's right. This is important because if it's a cross up, that's where the creek is. And I deleted it already, but I had a line right here yesterday, and I just deleted it. I was suggesting that that may very well be where it is. And so if you do have a drop here and you're concerned about downside, this is where you would have reason to think it could land again. And we're talking about the same exact numbers we were talking about before, kind of. Where you have reason to say, well, I think it could land right there, right? And I think that's very true. Now, can I draw a perfect line through that? Maybe. I tried to yesterday, and it didn't really look right, so I ended up using I think I pulled some from over here. I ended up using a bit of a curve. I think that the marker that we just did, maybe this bottom and this top, might be appropriate if you just really want to have a line instead of a curve. Curves are semi-unreliable, so I wouldn't blame you for being like, dude, I just want to know where the line is. Well, I say they're semi-unreliable because they kind of are. I mean, you have problems with curves because you're sort of estimating things. Let's see where that line goes. Okay. It looks like it interacts very heavily with that original creek, so that might be, oh yeah, that goes way back. It goes up to this peak. That's a pretty strong one, actually. And there is a jump right there with the breakout. When it came down, that's where it hit. So this could end up being like representative of the major creek line. Yeah, it sort of makes sense. That's why it was struggling to kind of hold that and push away from it and created the S around it. I don't know. To me, that just sort of reinforces what we already know, which is good. And I think that reinforcement is that's where the breakdown happened up here in March. And you can see when it gapped right through there. And it was in combination with that uptrend. We haven't gotten there yet, though. So it'd be a little irresponsible to say that it does that again. It has to do that again. The same thing for us would be dropping through both 271 and looks like 264 maybe as the crow flies. It just depends on when you get there. So there's a pretty strong correlation there between what we see. So what would make you feel bullish about this, Booksy? I think if you're going to have a sort of a fake out, and this is, honest to goodness, this is I think the last thing I'm going to be able to say about AMC right now. We could talk about it forever, but I think if you're going to have a fake out, you're going to pick 271 or maybe both, 271 and or coming back down to this top, because this is one that has not had support at all since. This is the only time this has acted as support, actually, was right here. And that was a pretty decent push-up. So that was right after earnings, it dropped down. And when it broke back out, that's it right there. That's the only time. That was on November 12th. It's the only time that's acted as support. And there was a big buy-in there. There's a big hike in on-balance volume. We did some weird stuff before then. You can see there's like a distribution that happened here. It like broke it, pumped it up, and then broke through it. Strange change of character happened. That's it. This was a support, but it doesn't make higher highs. So, I mean, you could say, yeah, it was a support there. It's not the only time it was a support. That's a bit of a misleading statement. But if you think about it, like that doesn't push up again. That's like a hook. And then the same thing would apply here. This doesn't ultimately push, beyond. It just kind of pushes away and then comes back through, pushes away, comes back through. On the big picture, that's what this did, but it's a big push. And that's important because that's your major, to me, I guess I would say that's one of your major cat ear lines, one of your major creek lines right there. It's become like a wave, up through it, down. Landing on top of that almost feels necessary. And we might just take a quick jut down to it and then pop. That's very close to, I kind of want to just I wish we had just done it today. I'm being serious. I would have preferred to just see it drop hard like these and just get there already. Just drop really hard through 272, bounce a little, and then hit right there, I think at 265. That'd be like perfect timing. That's an opportunity. That's an opportunity right there to generate a final kind of spring motion. Interestingly, that's kind of similar to what we had drawn yesterday too, but we drew it really low. Wouldn't that be bearish though? Well, it would look bearish because it would look like it just dropped all the trends, like I was saying, and then it would continue down. But again, remember when this drops, this has already made an SOW, and when this dropped, it went all the way through the bottom and then rebounds. So the hook is already made like a new low before it rebounds. This is different because this is still within the structure. And remember, like this is the particular level that we'd be talking about if you were doing a comparison. And that was again like already below. So that had chosen like the bottom. This is higher up. It's choosing like the middle of the structure. So it's possible that could hold. That would be evidence of like a Monday run. It'd have to gap up to here, basically. I always say gap because I'm pretty sure it would. If it does run. It'd be like that. I could see that. I'd see that that's more likely than this happening after that rejection today. Likewise, I think if you gapped up, let's say you started here and it started down, I think that could just be like the nail in the coffin type deal, or it starts coming below. And that's an indication perhaps that it's going to walk the other way. But right now, just based on the movement, I would say that most of these seem directed towards 265 again, which is the level I've been blabbing about for a while. So before I get to like requests, I need to mention that this is one that I come back to every now and then. It's not everybody's favorite, but MPW is a really, in my opinion, good long-term play as long as the company doesn't go belly up. They do medical properties, and it's a REIT. So it's a way of investing in real estate without investing in real estate, so to speak. Costs you $3 or $4 or $5, right, per share. But this is a very similar build out to what we saw to some degree, what we saw in AMC in 2020. There's some key differences, but one of the things I've been watching is that this could be a potential LPS, like a last point of support before an SOS. And I think if it is, it's not going to come back down. Now, an SOS might last a while, so it's hard to say. There's a gap zone between 628 and where the SOS top would be, like 712, which is this area right here. But it's going back to an area that has been traversed before. When we came down, it was built as a support, initial support coming down. That's pretty much exactly where you want to be if this is going to break out and run. So I don't want to get like into, again, too much of the nitty gritty about these details, but specifically like this SOS would be very likely to happen if it can hold support at 464. You're about 464 to 740, potentially by, it's hard to say exactly how fast, but potentially by July. And then from there, I think you've got a good chance. You've got a good chance of just pushing on out to the end. And I've done the measurement a few times. It really looks like October would be the end of that wave. Now, there's nuances here, but the biggest tell here to me is this widening breakout. From a technical standpoint, this is like a behemoth trend. I mean, this is a behemoth trend. There's a huge amount of volume on this bottom, and it's a historically like humongous bottom. Like it's gigantic compared to any other low that it's experienced. The last time it was here was in the financial crisis, I think of 2008. So way back here. And it hasn't since been really below this kind of middle zone, which is around $8 until locally, right, in 2023. That's like a 50% retrace of this widening. But a widening almost always, when it breaks, if it's confirmed, it will go back to the top. And so this had pushed the resistance right here. It dived locally. I think it could have made a spring, and this could be an LPS. It's possible that this is ready to go after that back test. And it really, to me, looks like it just needs to come back down and check the major breakout here by backing up to near maybe 450. And at lowest, I think it could come all the way back down to 414 and hit this low that was hit in November. But both of those levels, like anywhere now until then, 490 down to like 415 could be an excellent buy-in zone, because the next stop, if it holds here, is going to be pushing up and out. It's going to be going towards $10 again. And I don't take that very lightly. I genuinely think that's going to head towards like $8 to $10 pretty easily. And after that point in time, if this is like a 1, 2, 3, you would have a 4, because I did the measurement. The 4 would come back likely to this top and retest 690, but then 5 should take you back up, and it might be an extended 5, just depends on how far 4 goes, if it goes, but it should take you back up. Long term, this wouldn't get to the top till maybe 2027. It could take a while, but it's at $20 is where the top is. So you're talking about a move from $5 to $20. That's not there are no options involved in that, right? It's just 245% upside potential, which is huge. And that's not a bad call out either. If you look at the, like, it's not out of nowhere. It's like this huge widening long term. But then also, if you look at where that trend broke down and like where that goes, I'm specifically looking back here. This is absolutely like a valid estimation, and it just depends on which one you pick, because you could pick like a shorter one. This is 2016 for Pete's sake. This one's a little steeper because it has like a higher low, and those are hitting over here, so a gigantic kind of hook motion. And I don't want to go into any more detail about that, but I've been coming back to this one every now and then just to kind of like say, hey, this is what's happening. It's moving very slow to some degree. I've traded upside on it a few times. I've gotten screwed over a little bit here and there by some options activity on it that didn't really pan out. But I think that on the whole, it's ready to go. So not financial advice. Look into it yourself. They've had some problems with their tenants in the past and getting back to profitability. They have cut their dividend. They paid a dividend, but it does pay you for holding the stock, so that's kind of nice. I just think it's a really good technical play. I think it looks bad to a lot of people, but I personally think a lot of this is already like priced in, like the negative stuff. And I think there's going to be some good news that propels it forward. That's my opinion about it. FANG, I exited a call option for about 200%. I think it was like that, or it was a lot, but it was a decent call option anyways. It was like 110 or something right up here when it hit 148. So I know this looks like I just drew on top of here, but I did not. This was drawn out before it went down. It was like back here at May 6th, and I said it's probably going to dip, and if it dips, I'm going to buy it. And this one I actually followed through on. So I bought a 150 call, and it popped. It's just been kind of laying up on the motions like it should be. I genuinely think that this is probably going to go pretty far. On the big picture, it has not broken like the wider widening, but it did break this one again. So if it holds, and I don't know how low it's going to go, but if it holds over the next few weeks, somewhere above this like 139 area, 140 area, which is the previous top, and that gap right here, if it holds above that zone, I think it's going to just go again. And I think at that point, you're looking at a 4-hour 180 breakout. This is an expensive one. It's hard to trade options on it. They're not always very liquid, so just be careful. Tends to be that year over year, this is the big sell down area, which has already happened. And it tends to be that the big buy-in area is a little slow, but it usually ends up buying in pretty big in the summer months, meaning that summer months tend to have an upside flow. And if you're wondering where I'm getting that from, if you use TradingView, you can go to the info view, and on the info view they have, like, obviously there's a lot of stuff that you can look at. This is very bullish stock, except for the problem with the oil stuff right now being way too low. It says neutral, but the analyst rating is strong buy, whatever. You can go to the seasonals right here and click on more seasonals if you want. And you can sort of go through and take a look at where the uptrends tend to fall and where the downtrends tend to fall. So even though this is kind of a weird year for a lot of stocks, we have been following annual cycles still. So you can see like this downward period that starts in March, April, this tends to be a low period. And almost every single time from March to April to June, there's almost no exception. It's almost always moving up. So this is the last 6 years, I think, including this year. And you can see like there's some kind of a low that's hit early in the year. So there's a big bump in January in each year. And then there's some kind of a general low period. There's exceptional years like 2024 and 2022 tend to be oddballs for a lot of stocks. But you can use this just to kind of get the general flow. And most of the time, thtill a period of June, July. which I guess is like a peak oil season. And then they tend to sell back down going into October. That's pretty true of a lot of stocks. So it's not like universally true. But one thing I noticed about FANG is it's a little bit behind the market on the whole. Like it tends to be a little slower, where a lot of things are peaking at the end of May going into June, or they're being, you know what I mean? Like this tends to peak on average sometimes a little later. So I put that on the chart just to kind of indicate to myself, like this is a seasonal kind of trend that tends to occur. You can go a little haywire with this and like add like a bajillion lines, and you can use regular, but I don't recommend this because it like makes it really hard to see. I can barely see what's going on. You have to look at lines then individually. But on the whole, there's usually a bit of an uptrend on the whole, minus like a couple oddball years like 2022, which was a big down year for the market. On the whole, there tends to be a rise from after this sell-off in April. So I think that FANG is still in a good place of potentially buying. And I've had my eye on it for quite a while because I think it's going to come back really far. It's already been going down for a long time. Would not surprise me if we need to have some kind of big backup to do it sooner than later. But I think that on the whole, again, if it's going to do that, it's probably going to be like now, and that would be like a backup to get to some support. Previously on FANG, it went to 144 right here, hit multiple times and took off. It's already traded that region, so it may need to come back to like 144, which is sort of where we are now at some point in the future. But I'm wondering if that happens a little later. I don't know yet. Point is that it also has a bit of a large scale widening spread. So once it breaks over like 165, it should be heading all the way back to all-time highs, which is like 215. So I think it's a good one. Not saying it's going to take off tomorrow, but just one to watch. Put some creeks on it. You'll see what I'm talking about. Wolf, frankly, still looks like hot garbage to me. I'm not really sure. I saw somebody saying Wolf is going crazy, and I'm like, meh. It just looks like, I don't mean hot garbage in like a mean way. I just mean that it looks like it's doing what we already expected it to do, which was to like have a cat ear and come down. And right now it's just like a quadruple top. You know, it could change pretty quick, I guess, but right now it just looks like a hook. So it had broken through some trend lines here. And I think this guy, I don't know why I had this on the chart, but this guy was already here. Maybe I was using it to delineate where I thought the S curve might be, like a bigger curve might be forming. And it certainly seems like that might be the case. I mean, I don't always get it right, but this is one that I thought, well, if it comes back, it's probably going to come pretty low and then build back out. So you'd have potentially a larger S curve. Now, some of you might say, well, why can't it be really short and just push up? It could be, but the main curve that we have is this other line, and that doesn't go particularly high. So unless it jumps back above 540, which again would be like coming back into the previous range here, is not a buy in my opinion. Like there's a big swings on it every other day. It's just moving really far. You know, you can trade like RSI or something, but to me, if this is the buy-in, it needs to kind of sell down and finish. It's made a lower low here. I'll just wait. I would just wait if you're not in it. If it comes up, yeah, you're going to miss out a little bit. But I'm telling you, like, that is the zone right here that it has to break out. And there's so many different things. There's also like this creek coming down, which is like the major creek. It just doesn't make any sense. And we've been put off by this quite a bit. Where it's come up to that frequently in the past and failed. So I'm not saying it's going to fail this time. I'm just saying it would make more sense for me if this came down. Go ahead and get this retracement. Comes down real low, you know, and then it does like a wave 3. Maybe, you know, if this is an ABC, it won't do another one, but then I think you're in a really good spot. And that's probably going to look more like June. So this does favor like a pullback into the end of May, in my opinion, which is another one. I'm not going to go any further on this. I'm just going to say this has been on the chart for a while. This is what I thought was going to happen going into earnings. It looks like it's filling out the lines almost perfectly. So I don't know why we would kind of second guess it, except just to play devil's advocate. So I'm personally not on board with it right now. Again, if it breaks out, jumps the creek here at 470, jumps the creek again at 530, maybe we see that extension. It goes up pretty far, but I'm just not seeing it right now. So I don't know. It's up to you. If you want to trade it, do whatever you want to do. Maybe you want to average in slowly. I don't know. That's your choice. That might be a safe way to go through it. If you think, oh, what's at 370? I don't mind going down to 270 over the course of $1. That's fine. I think it's reasonable. You don't think it's going to back up that far, then, you can do that. And I would watch, again, the main creek bodies. This is starting to look so ridiculously perfect. I just don't know why you would jump the gun. I feel like if it does approach, it's going to be like a head fake and then drop back. That's just me. That's an opinion. I'm going to just look at NU, and then again, I'll start taking those requests. So NU is another one I follow because it's a very bullish perspective. I have been back and forth about how low this thing came, but I knew it was going to come down again, and it did. And it ended up coming below 950. And in the end, a lot of my targets, there were two target regions. One was like 950. The other was way down here, like 830. You can see why, because of where this was in the past, that it would need to come back to the top. So is this done? Well, it could be. This is a massive potential M cross right here. I wouldn't be surprised if it did try to come back down in the future and like make a low down here. I'm not sure what happens next. This is an M cross, so if it fails right now and then it drops through like $11, for example, then yeah, it's coming all the way down, I think, to 8, and that's where it would hit. But for now, just keeping it simple, it's broken out of its creek. So there was two resistances here, and it managed to push above. I don't know, man. It had a bad earnings again on a miss, but it's pretty obviously like breaking out. So could it come all the way back up to the top, all-time highs again? Probably. There's a gap up there at like 16. So what I'm trying to say is I would not be surprised to see this run really far. In the past, NU's gone way beyond and what I thought it might. It did come back down on top of that original trend we built a long time ago. But I bought it again a couple times, and it's been fairly lucrative. I'm trying not to trade options on it again because the options chain's kind of dry on this one, but it's easy enough to trade shares. It's like $10 a piece. So it's a good one. And it's a very bullish company. So NU Holdings, they have a digital bank presence in like Brazil. They have a couple different competitors, but that's otherwise a very empty market. So there's really only like one other that's doing online banking there, which is good for them. So, they can have some competition. Last couple beats, they missed like a little bit, you can see there, and then a little bit here, really minor misses. I mean, this is tiny. Their big thing with them is that they have like a ridiculous amount of revenue, and it just keeps like, the revenue beats almost every time by like 300 million. This is one that Warren Buffett actually called out on the bottom. And I found out like after the fact, because when you start looking up stuff on Google, it starts like recommending things. I was like, oh. But way back here is when I started trading it, and it's had a really good run. This is a long time ago, but this has so far been a really bullish stock. So I think that looks like the unwinding is done. This looks like a head and shoulder kind of business there. It winds up and unwinds. I think it's ready to move on, and this may not ever come back. I'm just saying. I'm saying right now, like, it's possible this comes back down, but it would not surprise me at all if it just like took off and just kept going, because it's a huge business opportunity, and it's a bank. So I mean, the fact is that it's making huge gains over and over again because it's increasing its customer base, and without a lot of competition in South America, it's spreading. I mean, you look at any other bank and you can see that there's a huge amount of possibility there. So, I knew. Yeah, I think NU looks just really good to me. I don't see the problem with it. There's really nothing wrong. The misses have been just so minor. And it just keeps bringing in like 300 to 400 million more revenue every time. Like it's outperforming analyst expectations, you know. Sometimes with stocks, you guys know this, like if it's already run a bunch, I would be like, oh, well, it's not a good buy. And you just had a massive push up and it's still like recovering from this drop. But I was like really bullish on it when it came back to like 10s and 11s and heading towards 9s. I was like, yeah, it's probably going to hit and go. It'll have breaks in between, but this isn't one that I think is bound to go back down to like $2 or $3 or something. You know, that's pretty unlikely. I think in the future, if it did come back, it'd have to be some kind of major catalyst event that caused it to come back, but it'd be like this guy here. That's as far as I could see it coming back, is maybe like $5 or $6. And if it ever gets back to $5 or $6, I'm going to take a look at it again, and the business model's still good. I'll be buying like crazy because I don't see why it should be down there. It's not worth that much, so. Yeah. PTPI. Creek jumper. Yeah. Well, Tesla has a lot of negative press, and it's one of those that tends to do pretty well even in spite of negativity. So there's been a huge amount of people saying that are just selling, and you got to be realistic about it. I mean, if a stock is running up and there's a lot of institutions selling, it's probably because they're taking an opportunity to like exit a play, you know. And sometimes we let the stock rise in order to take it back to a certain level. I don't think Tesla is destined to be destroyed necessarily, but it does make a difference when you go back and you look at some of these waves and you kind of consider like, well, you know, if it manages to breach back in here, try not to fudge it. I can't remember where I drew it last time, and it looks like it's trying to. If it manages to come back into there, and it's trying to right now, it has to hold this support. But otherwise, like, there's a chance this is like a wave up that's going to break down. And there's a lot of other creeks here, so I'm not going to go into those. But, you know, you would want to take a look at that and just sort of consider where that is. It's probably right there. It looks like it just pushed over it. This even makes more sense when you look at that from that point of view, that this might need to come back and check right there. That to me would be the best place to buy again. If it lands on that floor at like 326 in the future and it holds and it breaks out again, I think you're going to get a good spot. Seems very likely to me that it comes back. I wonder how long it takes. Could take a while. It's a good time for it anyways. But I don't think this is one of those that you'd want to hold on to necessarily forever and ever. Personally, some people are like really strong Tesla bulls, and I get that, but I'm like, I like it as a swing. It's got super high volume and interest. When people look at it, you can find there's almost never any problem with the options chain. So you'll make good money on it. So yeah, Finger we looked at the other day said that it's probably at a level where you might start seeing some selling, and not done yet. You know, it pushed up to like 5, and then it's kind of coming back down to 550. That's over the creek body, I think. So I'm not a huge fan of it because I think that it's close to potentially distributing again, but I can see why it's appealing to some folks as a squeeze play. I don't think I can track it as a squeeze other than just like level to level. So what I'm saying is it's kind of hitting an intersection right here of a lot of things. So if it's going to take a downturn, it would be in this area, and it's in that pocket right now. That doesn't mean it can't make some more highs or, shakeouts or whatever like that. That's not what I'm saying, but yeah. I don't see any problem with it at the moment going down as long as it kind of holds supports. But it is at a place where you'd probably see a lot of selling. So, all right. So this just had a revert or just had a split. Boy, you like to pick them. Another pharmaceutical. Yeah. All right. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah. So it's way out of its trend. I don't know, it feels like every one of these is like the same. There seems to be like a point, I guess when you get to $1, a point of no return, and then it always seems to lose its trend, because of a split or something. It seems like a lot of these charts are the same. My issue is that once it splits, a lot of that numerically goes out the window. Some of the stuff that was foundational, like RSI and, well, volume weighted RSI, which would be like an MFI, and on balance volume, things like that. Splits really jack with those numbers if you look at the formulas. It's up 11%. I mean, if you're interested in trading like a penny stock, I need a little more height to this. So this is kind of where I was looking at this. I saw it in the RSI. There's a build down right here, and then a build out right here. And then potentially this was also part of the build out right there. This is like a creek cross kind of deal. You see that? That wave down. That probably is your cat ear. And then this would be like the middle. So it's actually quite simple, even though that looks like that's not the middle. I know. This is the low. But in terms of wave crosses, like this is holding and then it jumps over, holds up, and then jumps down and then pushes down away. So that helps me to identify where that helped me to identify those two peaks really quickly. I don't know, I could have just drawn a line. But then you think about where it is now relative to those levels. It's going to be your main areas where you might get some support. It looks like September 2023. Yeah, it looks like that was a really critical support zone. And you can see the drop right there. You see the up thrust through it? directionally, because this would have been like a widening if it had held, but it didn't hold. It went to this guy and then like crapped out. So this is a big gap. This is a big creek gap, so to speak. It's like an empty zone. There's really no supports there. You can kind of hope that if it goes there, it rips through it, but there's almost nothing there. That's why it melted down and just passed right through. And that's probably why it melted up too. It's just mimicking what's already happened. So for now, that's like a no-fly zone. And if it hits it, it might just bleed up really hard through it. That could happen back to $1, but I would just leave it there for now. And then long term, hard to say. Really hard to say. I wonder if that was it. I think that was. It's just another cross. That one's not very good. This looks right to me. I think they probably marked this off really early on. So you can see the so what I mean is when I say marked it off, I don't necessarily mean that was inevitably going to go there. But when we look at weaknesses, remember like an SOW, a sign of weakness is a bearish direction. It's a bearish directional shift. So right here, there was an SOW. It pushed below the lows, came up, failed to make a higher high, really pushed down again. And then it's just distribution, like taking it up again into a UTAD. It's just failing to hold those levels. And so this triangle, I mean, you can just see the anchoring on the distribution right there. So this becomes somewhat significant because later, I think in the life cycle of the chart, the company, this trend randomly, right? It's like we're trying to get back to it quite often. There's probably, I would guess there's a series of like parallels right there. There is, where anytime the chart starts going down, this is sort of the resumed trend, which makes sense if you have people that are trading and shorting something on a kind of habitual behavior basis, that they're going to use like a similar motion every time. It's just a rise of a run, right? Trajectory. So like almost every time it's heading down, you can see that same pattern. This as well. It like drives down in a very similar way here, right through it. So there's a bit of a gap zone there in the creeks, which is fine, but then there's these parallels. And this right now is sitting on one of the lowest parallels, but it's not the lowest parallel. This is just the original SOW, but it looks like there was another one right here. And then you could even go further back. And again, it's like, why would you do this, right? Why bother? Because as a short, the major risk that you have with any given stock is going to be like a short squeeze, right? But beyond that, you could just keep taking a stock down indefinitely. But what you can't do that unless you're kind of finding structures to work off of, because it has to be like effective shorting has to have effective buying as well. Like there has to be an opposing side that's going to like play the levels. I think it's very simple. It's like you're going to have it go as long as you can. And if it goes from one split to the next, they would just keep using these parallels. So this is not necessarily the bottom, as I'm trying to say. Then we can go in and look at this from like a structural standpoint and say, well, where is it? You know, on a breakout scale, I mean, it looks like it's trying to hold right here, like a jump. And in doing so, it's created like another jump. These are going to be really subtle, so you got to keep in mind this is not a science that's perfect. It's going to be like subtle little motions. These are just waves. I don't think it's going to break out until it jumps this guy. And I'm not even really convinced it's going to look that good. Really, if you look at this jump right here and then the backup, it's a hot mess because this is way up top. It did not advance. It just has this massive upthrust and then it dies. So I don't see a lot of silver lining to it, is what I'm trying to say. You know, trade it short term. Maybe every time it crosses up on this daily, it looks like every time it's crossed this daily EMA or this moving average on the RSI, it's had a potential for a pop. So that would be what I'd watch right here. I think if the daily closes above, then you're in a buy zone. So that's what I would suggest. And then everything else on this is kind of whatever. You just have to wait and see. Because I don't know what happens there, you know. You get an influx of volume. So I mean, if it crosses up here, it did it once, twice back here. Both times were kind of so-so. This one was a bit bigger. And then long term, I guess I would say that it looks like it's already done its move. That's done. Let's check the lower lines. That's also done. Hits it, rejects, rejects. I mean, so from where I stand, this looks like it's going to try to go up again, probably. And at some point in the future, who knows when, it could end up on top of here and do like an M cross. But by that point, this thing could be all the way down at like 2 cents, you know, the way it moves. So I'm not a big fan of it unless you want to trade when it jumps that moving average. I'll look at price action, then I think we're going to move on. Yeah, so this was the last time it had a jump. It's sitting right underneath it. So it's trying, it's just not yet succeeded. I would look at it as like a wave, right? Like a crossover. So it jumped up, down, and then back up again. And if it can't go beyond there, then I don't see what stops it from like going down. It's that simple. And so perhaps it happens in combination. If it's going to break above it, it happened in combination with that. It'd be like a pop. This would jump over. I'm not going to even look at it smaller than daily right now. I think the only way this gets back to $1 is if it breaks the 27 cent, but it's clearly established right here. That's where that big selling climax is. That's where all the shorts took it down. They're not going to let you go beyond that very easily. So they created like a wall right there along that edge. It's unlikely that happens unless there's a short squeeze. So from a just basic buying and selling standpoint, it doesn't look like that's likely to happen. But, you know, what happens if this has an upthrust? Well, it probably goes back to that point. It probably goes to 28 cents, you know? Like that would make sense to me. If it's going to have an upthrust, if it ends up crossing up here at some point in the future, instead of kind of rejecting and going down, if it managed to make that jump, you could be moving from 15 cent to 28 cent. So you could like have a 200% move or 100% move or whatever. I think pretty easily there. It's happened before. That seems fairly reasonable. I don't know. And I'm saying, if it continues to reject right now, there's really nothing preventing it from just kind of slumping. This does not really tell me much, unfortunately. But that's the case with a lot of penny stocks. So you kind of have to just take them in stride, like they are what they are. They make their own rules, and you just kind of see what the rules are. This was one of the rules that seems to be applicable. Like every time it does this cross up on the daily, there seems to be a pretty decent jump. So the daily RSI cross might be good. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if you can. I think you can set an alert here, but I can't remember. I just don't remember how to do it. I think I've tried this before and I wasn't able to get it to do what I wanted it to do. I guess we could like take an average and just say, hey, tell us when this comes back above maybe the middle, if it ends up getting above the middle. Regular bullish divergence, same as chart 1 day. Crossing up 2881. No, I think we want it to be like right at that 30. That might work. I mean, if we saw that alert, it'd probably be in the right time. I think these are tough ones to catch, though. I don't see this as a easy to breach zone, though. I'm trying to say, like, from a big picture standpoint, there's probably a really good reason why when they shifted it down, they dropped to that point. There's just nothing there. So they created a wall, is what I'm trying to say. And it makes sense. There's no resistance or supports there at all. And I don't know exactly how that works on every chart, but it's like the gap already has like a built-in gap zone where it can just sort of melt through it. So I just think if they're going to hold that resistance, so maybe 24 cent again, I think is likely, but I don't think anything else right now. That's my opinion. KSS, I want to do that one. Yeah, I mean, if it breaks there, it's probably going to go really far, but I don't think it's going to be easy to break there. That's where the split happened too. So there's an issue of multiple layers, I suppose, of problems. This is weird. It's a weird chart. Coles. Well, I'm familiar with Coles. I don't know. I mean, they're still positive. That's negative. Positive. I mean, I was just looking at EPS on the whole. I've heard mixed things about retail, so I'm not a huge retail investor. I don't invest in a lot of businesses, retail businesses like that sell apparel or products or whatever. Is that this same Kohl's? I'm wondering if I'm getting this wrong. Or is this like a different Kohl's corporation? I don't know. Let's do a weekly on this because there's a lot of squigglies here. Let's see if we can smooth that out. You're saying the RSI looks good, but I'm like looking at that and I'm like having trouble even determining what's what. Interesting. Okay, so it's kind of straightforward, isn't it? So there's a massive widening going on. That's interesting to me. I don't know. It's kind of the life and death of companies. It's like hard to determine exactly. So this is a pretty huge like widening, but it's widening down with like a flat top, which is a very unusual pattern. And then RSI is listing down that whole time. You can see it starts. There's a big bullish run. You're kind of establishing all these levels, and then there's this really long sideways. Okay, let's just look at some basic stuff first, because I'm just checking out the RSI. So I'm going to look at when it's become oversold, if it has every time kind of broken back out. This is a unique one because this had divergence during this downward motion, so it didn't actually break out right away. It stayed kind of low. It also was still range bound at that time, so it's a bit different. Actually, there's some similarities because both of these go back to the 50. See that? Before they actually break out. So there's a similarity there. This is a longer term divergence. Started way back here and has triple bottom. And again, it doesn't really go until it hits the top, but it's downward the whole time. If you look at just where those lows are, it's pretty interesting. It was already on the uptrend here, so it's already like pushing up. That's a really long-term divergence. This is a weekly chart, so this is strange how long it took to really turn around. If you think about it, this is almost the exact same pattern. It's like this is going down, and then during that downward motion, there's a divergence, but it's taking again a really long time to sort of break out. And it's making lows in the meantime. This one's a little bit different in that once it hits the low, it just rebounds. There's no, it's not really divergence here. It's convergence, right? They're just kind of moving together. But same deal. You know, it doesn't ultimately break out in any of these cases until it hits the, actually this looks like it goes over here, until it hits that 50 marker. So we're kind of camping out. Sometimes it's exceeding it too before it actually gets there. This is a unique one because it goes over the top anyways, but. So there's different ways to trade this, and you don't have to use RSI, but that's something. Let me see where the, that's a 9. Let me do a 20 week or 30 week. Let's do like a 30 week. And there it is. Right, so it crosses up on the 30 week, and RSI is at 50. So that's a good indication. There's a simple pattern there of like, hey, when it jumps up over the 30 week moving average and the RSI is sitting at 50 after kind of a divergence, it's a really good buy, this one especially. So we're just kind of creating a little rule set in our brain. And then let's see how that relates to creek bodies. So this creek body, this is real slow. This one's actually kind of coming through the middle, and it doesn't break the outermost on these ears till far later, like when it basically comes back up. But there's a last minute motion right there that is followed through on. This one's also like that. It took a little bit of a detour because it goes up. There is a breakout there. And I would have drawn this the same way. I would have had the kind of cutting through it. That's the same way. I don't know. That's a pretty basic way of understanding it. Because, I mean, you can just look at a creek jump and say, well, there it is, you know. This is similar. It hit like a low. And then it builds out to the 50. So the low here was there and there. And so the cross up that would have been the most ideal would have been this one. RSI is like fully recovered. But it would have been tricky. I think we would have been, if we were trading way back then, we would have been probably misled based on that setup that this was about to go, because it already had jumped over. So it's a little tricky. So that's not a perfect rule. Anyways, there's no time where it comes to this bottom and it doesn't have a pretty strong reaction. So there's 3 major times I'm looking at. One's right here. I'm going to make this really bold. One is right here. It kind of does the same thing. It pushes up, bowls out, pushes up, bowls out. This is really similar. This one's different. It didn't quite make it to the bottom, but it's a huge dive, and it does do the same kind of push up. I would say this already was in a distributive function, though, by this point, because it looks like that was already kind of breaking down from way back yonder. And I'm going to guess that's like a 50% marker for like the bigger move or something. I don't know. It's some kind of fib level right here in the middle. We might consider that too. So this isn't a particularly like bullish chart in that they're long term. I think you'd have to kind of take in a lot of these things into consideration, that it's been slowly like pushing backwards and getting lower and lower and lower, and it's broken down. I mean, this is distribution here. So there's a 1, 2, and then there's a low, and then you have a 3, 4, and then a hook. So this is the cat ear at work right there. If you're privy to that, this is a sign of weakness. You probably saw it. This is a really boring middle, but this is like a middle of the ears. You could consider this the final, but I would have done this. And then this is just like a big hook. What does that mean? Why even bother finding that? That doesn't make any sense. Because wave analysis requires that to some degree. Like, you kind of have to know where this weakness is, and the fact that this had like built up a resistance here. That's the first establishing M. And then it jumps that resistance that's being built, and it tries to hold it up, but there's an idea here that we're really just kind of long-term selling off. So the second M is like a jump over that wave. So there's always some kind of, I don't know where it is, I'm just going to draw it here. It's probably pretty close, actually, because it hits this marker and then it establishes that as like a wave, right? And then later you can see it's returning back to those points of interest down here. So it's coming up and then it's like holding on for dear life. This is kind of distributive motion right there. See that U shape? And I know that made this not look like a U. It was already doing that. So it was already in like a bad shape. It doesn't spend almost any time in the upper. That's important. It spends most of its time in the lower 50%, which is a telltale sign of distribution, because it's not trading bouncing. It's trading like U shapes. Most of the time it's dipping through this bottom just to get the upthrust. Dipping through the bottom to get the upthrust. Anyways, point is that creek is already been established. So I'm kind of like cheating because we already know where it goes. But that's pretty much where it was. And I think if I had done it back in the day, I would have used one of these 3 points. Maybe this one even. I think I like this one even better as a likelihood. So this one's kind of more important to me because it found support here and it rejected there. So I'm like looking at it like, I wonder why they used the lower one. That's how much I think that one stands out to me, because there's a rejection there and then there's a support here. And I find that to be pretty interesting. Like that to me looks like a better one. So I'm curious again, why would you bother using the lower end unless the goal is to do something like this, where you have like a strong recovery and you can see that this actually builds up on top of it too. So later this ends up being like the trend support. Let's conclude these now that we've kind of structured it out. It seems like we're not doing anything, but we're doing a lot of stuff. We're kind of thinking about long term, like where is that trying to find support? This is an interesting one because it does look like there's like another widening, right? When you draw it that way, it's almost like a widening here from this point and a widening here from this point. Both seem kind of valid. And then another interesting point is that these trends, especially this lower one, seems to be echoed right there to some degree. So there might be a trend building as well. Now what I would do is use like the last creeks. This is going to be a bit tricky, but I'm going to use that one because this is the resistance and then it has an upthrust and a UTAD. So I'm going to ignore the upthrust and UTAD for now and just use where that was clearly going. That looks like a parallel to this. So I think that is a parallel trend. So I think that's being used. Yeah. That might be the crux of it, I suppose, right? So that's being used. That's parallel. So it's being used as a kind of downtrend. And it looks like this lower marker, that's what I was saying, like why not use this one? This one looks better. It looks stronger to me, but it seems like this lower marker might be to get some kind of like a buy-in initially. This might be a really good chart. I gotta be honest. It's starting to look like it's shaping up pretty good. This is a good like check right there. On that right there. It's got a big breadth. Like there's a huge amount of space. I like to see that. And it hasn't already made that move, which means it's potentially like a really good move. So there's a large amount of space right there. Now this could be all bottoming, so important to note, like it doesn't have to be that fast. So there's a large space here though for recovery. And you can see like last time it did this and it had that big recovery, the space would have been like right here. There would have been nothing there. There's a big amount of room to potentially reach back up to get to that middle. And it does. It has a big move. So where is it going to go? Well, this one went up pretty far. It didn't quite make it, but it got close to that 30 week. It didn't quite make it to the creek. So we probably would use this guy. And there it is. It's right there. So there's the 30 week and there's the creek right here. That's a pretty strong call out. I like this one. And then there's actually a ledge there too. And I think it goes to, that might be too low. Yeah. Goes to this support right there. I think this is about to have like what I would call like an auto reaction, but it might be in like 2 stages. So what I mean is that you might have like an auto reaction that goes up It needs to push above 945 to kind of confirm, but that's okay. It needs to kind of reach up here. But you may have a big pullback after that. So just have to be aware that this could end up with like a 50% retrace or something ridiculous and then go again. And my guess is that if you go look at this on the small picture, yeah, this is like a bowl shape. So you'd have a like a bowl shape kind of thing going here, like a parabolic move, and then it would drop and it would come back to this one. And that's going to be somehow like, I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but usually it ends up being a fib retracement at the same time. So if, for example, this managed to get back above, even 864 would be okay, but if it managed to get back above 9, let's say 9, yeah, maybe 960, then the middle is right there at 761. And that follows logic. So then now you have because you have a little trend right here. So if this makes a push all the way up, if it goes to like, let me just say this, if it goes to like 980 or something, it's probably an exit because you don't want to like hold through all that crap if it comes back down. It just depends on how you want to play it. And then there's an earnings right here on the 29th. I don't know. We're kind of guessing at timing now. I don't know if I like that. Earnings always makes things a little shaky for me because I always wonder, like, how do you move through it? And you might end up not doing what you expect. I could see it going all the way there now to like $10. But it's like, who knows, you know? This could take up until earnings. And it could be on the other side of this wave. There's a lot of risk involved in that. And you might be saying, well, I don't know what you're talking about. What I mean is that like it would be just as realistic to think this could become overbought, for example. I'm on the 4 hour now. And then really like chop down and go ahead and get this early. And then by earnings, it's actually sitting on a like kind of an SOS, you know? And then it goes up. And then you still have to deal with you still have to deal with the secondary motion then, because you never go up. So there is a little bit of a problem there. Because yeah, then you still have to potentially deal with like some kind of a backup here before any kind of advancement. Let me see if there's a bigger creek, another creek, because usually there's an anchor for this type of wave. This one's easy. There's actually one right there. It's super simple. It's like really flat. That's good. Yep. Perfect. Right where it should be. This is a nice chart. And then there would be like a bottom, which probably is a trend. So we'll just do that. Copy paste. Yep. There it is. So this actually supports the idea, both the ideas. So one would be that it comes above slightly 870. So it could hit like 882, and then it doesn't go all the way. It just backs up. So it's making a slightly higher high, but it's not invading this land just yet. It's used to like sell it off. And then it comes back down, gets the backup on the creek here, and then it goes again right around earnings in a more of a little SOS, sort of like a cup and handle, I guess. But like that would actually make a lot of sense because then you're approaching that creek twice. So you kind of check it the first time, and then it also breaks over here. And then the second time it takes off through it, it probably goes to the top one, and that's the check on the top one. I'm not saying it can't do it the other way, but that seems highly likely. So first it'd be like check 1 right here, and then back up, right? And then check 2 would break it at earnings, and it goes up to the top and test the top of that trend and that bigger motion. And then you have, then you have a potential for like a bigger backup. And this is where it comes back down, and it probably does some kind of weird long double bottom thing or close to it. It could take a while. I don't think it'd be super, super boring, but I mean, yeah, like best case, you don't come back below 840, but I don't see why you couldn't come all the way back to this trend. It actually make more sense to me to come back down after that, because that'd be like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you could come back down real slow. It's classic kind of M cross stuff right there. You're coming back to check this jump, and that uptrend would be met at the same time. So this is now where the creek is, so to speak. The resistance is here. It's not really as complicated as I'm making it seem, maybe, but we're just talking about this on the whole, and then maybe at that point, going June and July, if it's bullish, should come back up, make a higher high, and then form a bottom. I know I'm making it really elaborate, but my guess is that this ends up being kind of significant. And that actually works really well, because it's really established that creek and then jumps it. And this is where you have a bigger run up, and it hits that top. And all of that seems like a lot. It does, to like guess, but if you think about it on like the big picture, it actually makes a lot of sense. And that is very similar to what was experienced back here before it broke out. And then you'd have a time of consolidation, because it's now at that 30-week zone. So I don't even think it necessarily gets there. It probably gets like close, but then you'd have a time of consolidation and like sideways here before anything else really happens, And what we'd probably see at that point, and I'm going to go back to the weekly, probably, I mean, I don't know for sure, but we probably see at that point is that that's actually all part of this like bottoming here. Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to be 1-to-1, but it's set up like that. I mean, it's set up really similar, so it seems likely. It may not go that high. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, then during that time period, this is like come back up and like chilled out a little bit and kind of eked its way up towards that 50, and then you get the breakout somewhere around here, as long as it's not like really long-winded. I think when that happens, it's likely going to come back up. I do think it's going to happen, because I think it will come back up here. I have to say with caution that it's nothing in the market's kind of guaranteed in that way. Previously, when it jumped, it just kind of went, right? And it established that there was a creek here, but that actually doesn't ever get tested again. It just kind of went through it like a 50-50, and then it came back down on it later. We would say that there's a similar motion right here. And so in theory, like when it breaks here, it could like 50-50 up through that. And that makes sense to me, that this could then have like a 50-50 up through that marker and come back to retest this level. It's in the right spot for it. I don't see a problem with that as an analysis. It does not suggest necessarily that this goes up forever and ever, though, and doesn't come back. Kind of looks like it'd be going back to this test of $20, maybe this 21.50 area, which was a consolidation zone. It makes sense. Probably the highest liquidity in this area. It hasn't been traded since forever. So, the last time this zone was traded was way back in 1996. Now, after that point, could you have like a V-shaped recovery? Yeah. I mean, long term, that's a different question, but you could. If this is a V-shaped recovery, we can use, where is that? Why is it not showing me the angle? Oh, it's because I use an arrow. Probably 55 degrees. Something like that. So you're talking about coming back up to retest maybe these levels or thereabout. Yeah, possibly by 2028, you could be back up here. It sounds like a long time, but this took a long time to come down. This was 2022, so it took years to drop. So I mean, if it does not distribute and it just kind of chills here and then it has a breakout, you might see it have a V-shaped recovery. But it's got to do a lot of things. I mean, it's got to break out here as well. So this would be like a 50-50 zone, and then it come back up. Maybe 2028, 2029 or something. So if it's going to be back here at some point in the future, that's where it would have to go. And it's a big if. We don't know. It could end up getting to this point and just kind of crapping out and heading back down. It's totally possible. I mean, it could go all the way back to like this area from 94. I think this is pretty likely though, this first push. I just don't see why you'd stay down here. You'd have to come back to something. And that's about a 50% retracement. So what does that look like long term? It probably looks like, not assuming that it's going to go faster than the trajectory, and just kind of taking that as like a guidance post for maybe how quickly this thing moves, that you wouldn't necessarily be up to 20 until December of 2026. Now, realistically, is there probably going to be some kind of a move in the middle that's really fast? You know? Yeah. But we don't have enough information yet because it hasn't even made any kind of real bottom. It's just starting. It's so small, right? And we're making a lot of assumptions here, but we're using the behavior of the chart as the main analysis. And we're saying, well, this is what happened in the past when it's had these bounces. Sometimes it doesn't do this though, right? Sometimes it bounces and drops again, but it's already had such a massive drop. I think it's safe to say it's probably going to go ahead and push on out and head towards the top here on the weekly. Now with these cycles, time between them is fairly even. I wouldn't assume anything, but I would just say, like, for now, that's the behavior of this. It looks pretty right. So yeah, is there probably going to be a movement that goes really fast? You know, maybe it's this 2026 squeeze I keep talking about, that February thing. It seems to line up for a lot of stocks. And then it's kind of a slumping year, which also lines up for a lot. I've said that I thought end of the year probably has a nice move, but then 2026 might be kind of crap. And that makes sense. I don't know. It's just a thought. But this is reasonable, I think. So I don't see a lot of danger in getting $20 strikes or something like that for mid next year, May. It's a risk, but then again, you know, everything's a risk in the market. So, and that's a long-term play. I mean, if you're just trying to do a rebound, then you can look at that short-term business that I had on the chart, like right there, just the bounce and the reactions and stuff like that. I probably wouldn't initially trade it past 9 at most, and then I would wait and see if it pushes to 10 after earnings, which is coming up. It's not far away. And then I would expect a little bit of a slump going into the, it may not take that long. I don't know. But this is July 11th, which is that big date. So it would not surprise me if we had to come back down because of tariff stuff until the 11th. So yeah, short term, I would look at maybe $12 for late summer. And then long term, maybe look at 2026 June. So this might be a good trade. So short term, we're looking at really short term, we're talking about going into earnings. I mean, we're making a lot of assumptions here because we're thinking that if it runs up, it breaks down, but it could run down and break up. And it could be in the middle, look like it's going to break and come down. So it's still a risky play. You can't just like set it and forget it. Sometimes you can do that, but this one, you just have to monitor probably like this 4 hour and daily and just see if it gets overbought and where it is and how it's moved through here. But I think it's okay to make some kind of a gesture that this is probably going to go up in June to $10 by mid-June. And at the very least, you could get out early if it bumps to like 9. You don't like want to hold it and you want to wait to get back in and see what happens. And then I think going into July, so I would say July to August, maybe late July. That's a tough one. I might just go to August just to be safe. Then you're looking at 12. And then I honestly think I probably wouldn't do much else. 2026, maybe June, you could see $20. They're probably pretty cheap right now. I mean, you're halfway to 20, but it's not like that's a given, so. And it could be quite a long journey to get there. I mean, you never know. I guess if it just exploded, you just make money. But I don't see that as super likely right this second. I think there's going to be an established bottom and probably has to build support here in the 10s again. Well, I'm not going to be able to do everything. I pick and choose. I'm trying to, I know I only did a few, but I'm trying to, be reasonable. So, Jason, you've always got like 30 different ones you want me to look at. I can look at maybe 1 or 2 a day if we have time. I'm going to have to go right now because it's time for me to stop, but I need to take a break. Today's been kind of slow anyways. Is it okay to look at it now? I wanted to kind of wrap up and just be done, so. But you can always ask again. I think I was right about this being like another top motion. It hooked underneath 277 and it pushed down. Was asked if this is likely going to go to 250 or below. I can't tell you that it's highly likely unless it breaks through 265, which is already like halfway there. So it's a strange one because of the way this is set up. If it's truly bullish, then I do think it hits like 265 and just takes off Monday. Like really bullish. I'm talking about like it's going to move in the near term, But you have to be cautious because until that happens, there's no way to know for sure. Until that kind of move happens now above 276 again, that kind of thing. And we don't know. The rest of the week, I have it going down here, but maybe it's just flat. And that screws with timing, right? I can't tell you for sure. I can tell you that in days past, has this broken down? Yes. The fact that we're not going down immediately bothers me. Because the longer this takes, the farther this could potentially drop, right? If this takes forever, if it takes a week and a half to 2 weeks, and it's just sitting up here, then if it drops, now that creek is so much lower, propping it up and then dropping really far is often what happens with distribution, because they're loading up on short positions before the big run. We've already kind of gone through it all. I've told you guys that I think it's possible that it goes down to even like as low as 230. It's logical for other reasons that might happen. There's a bigger creek right there before breakout. Do you want to hold your breath about it? It's a question of liquidity, and I really can't tell you. I do not have the answer. I do not have a crystal ball. I could tell you that right now this looks a bit weak to me. It looks like it's going to come back. I think it could potentially hold above 265, but I also think that they're going to probably use that to their advantage and not tell us. So it would not surprise me at all if we're at like 270 on Friday after hitting 265, because then you're just sitting there like, well, is it going to break or not? You don't know. And then Monday you find out, that kind of cliffhanger nonsense happens all the time. So I would not at all be surprised if that happened. We did find other targets back here that may need to be checked, like 257. That's another possible area right here. That's one that has come up quite a bit. Does it hold there? I don't know. Could it hold there? Maybe. The thing is like with an M cross like this, it's not going up already unless you count this push. And I've already said it enough, so I hopefully don't have to say too much more. But the first thing that happens after this push is very important. If it comes down and it holds higher support and then it starts breaking up, I don't see the risk. I think that's bullish, What I mean is that, there could be so many more fake outs here. It could be a bit of a pain in the butt, But even on a Monday, Tuesday, if this were to somehow drop and go to this level, even then, the bear is going to be like, well, it's going to drop again. And I could see that. And they're like, well, man, it's going to do this and go in an S-curve and drop down to the bottom. I get that. But even then, if it then broke out and starts pushing higher than like this 270 mark and it held support, you're kind of like left in limbo because you're like, well, crap, now what, right? Well, that's an M cross that maybe didn't go down right here, 1 and then maybe 2. Then you have to wait it out again. It's like the iterations are almost endless, But this is something I could see happening if they were going to delay it until Memorial Day. You could have a cross up going into that Friday. So it's really, really tough for me to tell. This would be a way to keep it sort of obnoxious, almost have the same thing twice, right? And there's so many other things that we could go through. I mean, there's so many different setups that we could go through, and I don't want to bore you to death with every single one. This could take till June, or it could be that Memorial Day weekend on the 27th, and we just don't know. So I have to be cautious because I'm like, there's not really a one size fits all, because it's not giving us the answer of maybe like that. I don't know. It's not giving us the answer of like whether or not this is going to be bullish. Earlier today, it did that fake out move. It came up high. That was the move that needed to jump over. So after that, I was pretty sure this was going to look a bit bearish for a time. But then now we're just looking at lows. That's it. So I don't have any other, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you. I know where the levels are. One's a 265, one's a 257 or thereabouts. And then that's it. I think after that, you're probably just going to look at lows. I don't really see a double bottom as highly likely. It always could happen, but I just don't see it as highly likely. So my cat's flipping out. I think she's going to need to be put up or something. She's growling and hissing at everybody. I don't know what she's doing. Something really wrong with her. Hey, knock it off. Imogen. Oh my gosh. Who is she even growling at? There's nobody over there. Sorry, she's acting crazy, dude. On the big picture, I think we talked about it earlier. This is a key zone, but it would not surprise me again to see that double flush, which is what we did yesterday, like that flush around it and then back over it. So that's why I'm not really sure. And I don't think you can be sure. Sorry. Do I think it's likely? Sure. It's likely. I actually think it's probably as likely as the bull side at this point, if not more likely, maybe slightly. But I'm not in a 60-40 position this time. You already know, like I was wrong. Like I thought it was going to be going up as soon as this week. I thought we would lose the day on Friday. You know, I didn't think we were going to necessarily go last week, but I did not expect this to happen right here. So now it's just chop and it looks kind of meh. It needs to show that reversal over 285. And the longer this takes going out, the farther the drop could become. So it's a problematic feature of AMC is that the longer it delays, you know, the farther it's going to go down if it drops. That just tends to be the way that it is. I'm bullish if it holds above 265 here, and then I'm kind of bearish if it drops below. It seems like a lot. It's like 10 cents, but it's just that we've been here for so long, I'm not really sure. If there's a better value here, I think that's the best one. It'll happen eventually. Or it won't. Or it won't. That'd be horrible. I would probably, I don't know what I would do. Just give up. I'm just kidding. I probably wouldn't give up. I'd be pretty annoyed. So, I'm planning on hedging anyways because I still don't think it's going to go up and just go up forever. So that's not my opinion about it. I think it's likely going to go up and still come back down. So I'm not afraid at all to just tell you like I'm already in put positions. Like I'm buying some cheap puts for later. And I don't care. I mean, if it doesn't go, it doesn't go down now. If it goes down now, I might just reset them. But I mean, my hedging isn't a problem for me. I don't worry about it too much. I just do it. My biggest fear is not down and it's not anything else. Really, my biggest fear is still that it hits like 330 or something and then just craps out. Like that's my biggest concern because I know in my head it's a possibility and that I probably would not be prepared for that. You're like, well, why not? You just said it. If it does a spike to 330, I'm probably going to think it's going to keep going, you know, because that's a big problem. Because then if it pulls back through, I have to make sure that I'm like paying attention. That's my biggest concern right now, is that level. Everything else is kind of like, meh, it's not a big deal. So, anyways, I got to go. You guys have a good one. I will stream at some point tomorrow.